A thought can rewrite your whole day. You get a short message, and in seconds, a story of conflict is already there in your mind. Your heart beats faster. Your mood shifts, and nothing real has happened yet. That's the mystery, this inner world where thoughts seem to have their own power. The ancient Stoics mapped this. They did it with real precision. They named 3 core disciplines for a tranquil life: desire, action, and assent. Today, we're looking at the most pivotal one, and maybe the most overlooked, the discipline of assent. It's the silent gatekeeper. It decides whether a thought stays a suggestion or turns into a commanding emotion. Epictetus said it, people are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. Your view, your judgment, your agreement, that's the moment of assent. This video is a practical framework for that mechanism. You'll learn how to intercept thoughts before they hijack your peace. You can transform your relationship with anxiety, with anger, with desire from the inside out. We'll explore a mental pause. Most people never notice it. That pause holds the key to emotional freedom. Mastering this one skill can make you impervious to the chaos of outside events. What was the first impression you agreed with today? The one that secretly shaped your emotional state. Every emotional reaction starts with an agreement, a quiet, internal yes. That's the discipline of assent. Something happens in your mind first, an impression shows up. The Stoics had a word for it, fantasia. It's not something you choose, it's just the raw that initial meaning that flashes in your mind. It feels completely true, but the Stoics said it isn't. They called it an impression. It's just a suggestion, not a fact. It's a piece of data that's already been colored by your past, your fears, your hopes, all these biases you carry. The impression, my boss ignored me, she must be angry. That's not one piece of information. It's 2. There's the bare event. My boss walked past without speaking. And then there's the heavy story we wrap around it. That story is the judgment, and we mistake the whole package for truth. So the discipline of assent starts with a checkpoint. Before you sign anything, you learn to read the fine print. Marcus Aurelius told himself this constantly. He wrote that you have to strip away the legend that encrusts things. See the thing itself separate and naked. He meant this skill. To take that loaded impression, this is a disaster, they meant to insult me, and scrape off the drama. To get down to the bone of what actually happened, not what it means, just what is. That scraping requires a pause, and this pause is everything. It's where your freedom is born. Because in the automatic rush from impression to reaction, you're on a track. There's no freedom, but in that deliberate space between the two, you find your sovereignty. You get to ask, is this a fact or is it my interpretation? Is this thing actually bad or have I just decided it is? Our minds are brilliant storytellers, but they're flawed. They take a neutral event and instantly weave a tale of threat or loss or personal slight. A bias-like personalization assumes everything is about you. Catastrophizing turns a small setback into certain ruin. Your impression is often just the first draft of a biased story, so the practice is simple, but it's difficult. It's fact-checking your own mind. When you feel that emotional spark, frustration, worry, you stop, you rewind. What was the actual event, just the sensory data? Then, what was the story I immediately added? The story is where the emotion lives. For example, the fact is, a project deadline was moved earlier. The story might be, my manager doesn't trust me, they're setting me up to fail. The anxiety you feel isn't about the change date. It's about the story of mistrust you agreed to without a second thought. So the challenge is to try this once. Pick one impression that comes up, a flash of irritation in traffic, a pang of insecurity from something you see. Pause and do the separation. State the bare fact like a camera recording it. Then state the story you were about to believe. Just seeing the gap between them changes things. It shows you a choice you didn't know was there. You don't have to buy the first story you're sold. And in that realization, the emotional power of the thought starts to dissolve before it ever takes hold. Your capacity to give or withhold assent, it's like an inner fortress. The walls are strong, the world can throw anything at them. Chaos, criticism, loss, delay. But the gate to that fortress, it has one key holder. You. This is the link, really, between the discipline we've been talking about and the most famous Stoic idea. The dichotomy of control. What is always 100% up to you, not events, not other people's actions, not the weather or traffic or the stock market. The only thing that's completely within your power is your own judgment, your choice to agree or disagree with the impressions that come. Epictetus starts his whole handbook with this division. Some things are up to us, he says, some things are not. Our opinions, our impulses, our desires, our aversions, these are up to us. Everything else, the body, property, reputation, our duties, those are not. They're externals, and our assent, that quiet internal yes or no, it sits in the first category. It's the most fundamental action we own. You can't stop the initial impression from appearing. The thought that this traffic jam is terrible, but you hold absolute command over whether you endorse that thought. You can refuse to sign the contract. You can look at the story your mind is telling you and say, I do not assent. This is the root of Stoic resilience. It's not about feeling nothing. It's about recognizing where your agency truly lies. And investing your energy only there. Most of our suffering comes from a misplacement. We try to command the external world, to force it to conform. We fail. We feel helpless, or worse, we surrender our internal command to the external world. We let a delayed flight dictate our inner peace. We assent to the impression that this shouldn't be happening. But the traffic jam doesn't care about your assent. The delayed flight is indifferent to your judgment. By agreeing it's a catastrophe, you've handed the keys of your inner fortress over to a circumstance. A circumstance that has no interest in them. You've besieged yourself, so let's make it practical. You're stuck in traffic, late for an appointment. The initial impression is loud. This is a disaster. This is ruining everything. That's the suggestion. Now you enter your citadel. You exercise your sovereign power. You separate the fact from the story. The fact is, the cars are not moving. The story is, this is a personal catastrophe that shouldn't be occurring. Your power lies in assessing that story. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it within your control to make the cars move? The answer is no. So you withhold your assent. You might think the cars are stopped. This is frustrating, but my judgment of it as a world-ending disaster, that's optional. I can choose a different judgment. This is time. I can listen to an audiobook. I can practice patience. The external circumstance hasn't changed one bit, but your internal world has shifted from a state of siege to a state of command. Here's a prompt. Look at a current challenge in your life, large or small. Identify the external part, the thing you likely cannot change right now. Now look inside your citadel. What specific judgment about that situation is within your walls to change? Even if the circumstance remains stubbornly the same, what story are you telling yourself about it? What story could you, right now, choose to stop endorsing? That shift in judgment doesn't solve the external problem, but it reclaims the only ground that ever mattered for your peace. It secures the fortress from within. A thought is just data. Assent is what turns it into a fire. Until you agree, an impression just floats there. It's neutral. It can't move you, but when you nod yes, you pour fuel on it. You give it authority over your nervous system. That story, I will fail, I am being disrespected, it becomes a command. And your body listens. Seneca wrote about this with anger. He said it starts with a first impression of an injury. That's just the data, but then we admit it. We let it in. That admission is assent. We've agreed the injury is real and unjust, but it doesn't stop there. He says we nurse that thought, we dwell on it. We elaborate, we fan that spark into a full blaze. The emotion isn't in the initial impression, it's in the admission and the nursing, the assent and the repetition. You take a small suggestion and by agreeing, you build it a home in your body. Your heart rate changes, your muscles tense, your focus narrows, all because you signed a contract with a story. Take anxiety about a future presentation. The bare impression is simple. You have to give a talk next week. That's just a fact, it's neutral. Then comes the first story your mind suggests. What if I forget everything? What if they think I'm incompetent? This will be humiliating. That's the offer. And in the quiet after that thought, you have a choice. You can question it. Is that a certainty or just a fear? You can withhold your assent. If you do, the thought might linger, but it stays inert, like a movie trailer playing in another room. You know it's there, but it's not commanding your attention or your physiology. But if you assent, if you agree, yes, that is what's going to happen, I will fail, then everything changes. You've injected that story with energy. The moment you believe it, your body responds as if the threat is real and present. The anxiety floods in. Your palms might sweat just thinking about it. Your mind starts racing with more scenarios. That's the fire lit by your own agreement. The presentation is still days away. The only thing happening right now is your judgment, your endorsement of a painful future that doesn't exist yet. So here's a prompt. Think of a current worry, a low-grade anxiety humming in the background. Maybe it's about money or a relationship or your performance at work. Trace it back, not to the situation, but to the specific catastrophic sentence you have, maybe silently, agreed to. What is the core judgment you are nursing? Is it I am not enough, or this will all fall apart, or I will be exposed? Find that sentence. That's the impression you gave your assent to. That's the contract you signed. And seeing it clearly, written out in your own handwriting, is the first step to revising it, to taking back that signature. The fire only burns with the fuel you choose to provide. The most powerful response to a troubling thought is often to just decline the invitation to believe it. That's the art of mental non-engagement. You're not fighting it. You're not suppressing it. It's something more subtle. It's the active choice to withhold your assent, to look at what your mind presents and say, I don't have to decide if this is true right now. I can let this sit for a while. This is a kind of superpower for emotional regulation. Very few people learn to use it. Think of it as creating a buffer zone. The impression arrives loud and demanding, dressed up as an urgent truth. Your old habit is to engage immediately, to either accept it and feel the emotion or to wrestle with it, to argue it down. Both of those are forms of engagement. You're giving the thought your energy. Withholding assent is different. It's a polite, firm neutrality. You acknowledge the thought's presence without granting it citizenship. Epictetus gave us the perfect script for this. He advised saying to an upsetting impression, wait for me a little. Let me see who you are and what you are about. Let me put you to the test. That pause, that waiting is the essence. You're not accepting its authority. You're placing it under review. And in that space, reason has time to wake up. This is crucial to understand. It's not avoidance. You're not running from the thought. You're consciously choosing not to feed it with your belief. A thought you don't assent to is like a seed in sterile ground. It can't take root. It can't grow into the full vine of anxiety or anger. Without your agreement, it remains just a possibility, a piece of data, not a directive. Let's apply this to a modern arena, social media. You scroll and see a post, a political opinion you find infuriating, a comment that feels like a personal slight. The impression is immediate and hot. It comes with a story. This person is ignorant. They are attacking my values. The old you would assent instantly. You'd feel the flush of anger. Your fingers might itch to type a furious reply. You've just handed over your inner peace to a stranger's words on a screen. But the practiced you, the one training in this, takes that micro moment. You see the impression, you feel the pull to agree, and you consciously choose to withhold. You think, I see this, I feel the reaction, but I don't have to decide right now that this is a truth worth getting upset over. I can let this impression wait. You might even scroll past. The external event is the same. The post is still there, but internally, you've diffused a bomb by simply not arming it. You've protected your own mind. So here's a practical challenge. For just 1 hour today, practice withholding assent from all initial negative impressions about other people's actions. Your coworker sends a brief email. Your first impression is they are being short with you. Withhold assent. Don't endorse that story. Just let the email be an email. Someone cuts you off in traffic. The impression is they are a rude person. Withhold. Let the car be a car changing lanes. See what happens. You'll likely find the emotional charge around these events just evaporates. They pass through your awareness without sticking because you stopped giving them the glue of your judgment. In that hour, you're not changing the world. You're changing your relationship to the impressions the world creates. And in that quiet space of non-engagement, you might just discover what true mental freedom actually feels like. You have this pause, and in that pause there's a kind of counselor. It's reason. The Stoics called it logos. It's not cold. It's your capacity for clear judgment. It's the part that can step back from the emotion and ask simple questions. The whole discipline of assent is letting this faculty govern, making it the gatekeeper for your thoughts. Your mind works in 2 modes. There's the reactive part. It's fast, it's emotional, it jumps to conclusions, it's for survival, not truth. Then there's the deliberative part. It's slower, it's curious, it wants to examine, it's for understanding. The first mode shouts, the second mode listens, and then asks for evidence. When you feel that flash of anger or that knot of worry, that's the first mode in charge. It has already assented, it's already agreed with a story. The practice is to interrupt that, to call in the second mode, to let reason take the witness stand and cross-examine the impression. Marcus Aurelius did this constantly in his private writings. He told himself to use logic, to examine things, to strip away the story. He wasn't giving a pep talk. He was performing the ritual of switching modes, consciously summoning his inner advisor. He wrote, "Objective judgment now, at this very moment. Unselfish action now, at this very moment. Willing acceptance of all external events now, at this very moment. That's all you need. That objective judgment is reason in action. It's the tool you use right now to assess the thought." So what does this sound like? Take a common impression. A friend doesn't reply to your message for a day. The initial story is loud. They're ignoring me. I must have done something wrong. They don't value the friendship. If you assent to that, you feel the hurt. Resentment builds. But if you invoke your inner advisor, the conversation changes. Reason steps in. It asks quiet questions. Is it their intention to disrespect me? Or is that my interpretation? What evidence do I actually have? Could there be 100 other reasons for the delay? What's a more measured, less personal view of this? With each question, the solidity of that initial story starts to crack. You haven't denied the possibility. You've introduced doubt, and doubt is the antidote to blind assent. It creates space. In that space, you might land on a more reasonable judgment. My friend is likely busy. This has no bearing on our friendship. I can choose not to take this personally. The external event is unchanged. Your friend still hasn't replied, but your internal world is no longer a hostage to that painful narrative. Reason has negotiated a peaceful resolution. Think of a recent situation where you felt a sharp emotional spike, a critical comment at work, a plan that fell through. In that moment, your quick emotional assent overruled reason. You bought the story immediately. Now, in hindsight, what single question could your inner advisor have asked to change the outcome? Is this about me, or is it about their own stress? Is this a permanent problem or a temporary setback? Just identifying that one question trains the muscle. It prepares reason to speak up sooner next time. This counselor is always present, but we have to choose to consult it. And every time we do, we strengthen our sovereignty over our own mind. We move from being a passenger of our impressions to being the pilot, guided by the clear, steady voice of logos. A thought can feel overwhelming. It fills your entire mental field. The story your mind tells you it gains its power because it's the only story you can see in that moment. Cognitive distancing is about deliberately widening that field. Creating space between you and the impression so you can see it for what it is. A small event in a very large world. Marcus Aurelius called this the view from above. He would practice mentally rising above his immediate concerns, picturing the bustling markets, the armies on the march, the farms and seas, all from a great height. From there, he noted how small a part of the boundless abyss of time is allotted to each of us. He wasn't trying to be dismissive, he was practicing perspective. Shrinking the drama of the impression down to its true size, so it could no longer command an outsized emotional reaction. The mechanism is simple. When you're inside the story, you are the story. Your identity gets wrapped up in the conflict. I am being wronged. My project is failing. This is a catastrophe for me. But when you mentally step back, you separate from the narrative. You become an observer of the event, not just a participant. And from that observer's seat, the emotional gravity lessens. It's the difference between being in a storm and watching a storm on a weather map. The storm is the same, but your relationship to it is utterly transformed. Take a tense work conflict. A colleague publicly criticizes your idea in a meeting. The initial impression is a hot rush of humiliation and anger. The story is loud. They are undermining me. They want me to look bad. This is a direct attack. If you assent here, you're in the storm. Your body is reacting. Your thoughts are defensive. Now, practice the view from above. First, imagine floating up to the ceiling of the meeting room. See yourself there and your colleague and the others. From here, it's just a conversation, a few people talking. The emotional charge already feels a bit quieter, more contained. Now pull back further. See the building from above, then the city. From this height, your office is a tiny box among thousands. The meeting is invisible. The conflict is a silent speck. Now pull back to the orbital view. The continent, the planet, a pale blue dot in the blackness. Where is the criticism now? Finally, add the dimension of time. This meeting is 1 hour. In the context of your career, it's a moment. In the context of human history, it is less than a blink. Does this make the event meaningless? No, but it radically changes the story you tell about it. The narrative of catastrophic personal attack starts to seem disproportionate. It loses its compelling power. The impression is still there, but its grip has loosened. This isn't about avoiding the issue. It's about approaching it with clarity, not with panic. From this calmer, broader perspective, you can ask better questions. What is actually happening here? What part of this is within my control? How might I respond with integrity rather than from wounded pride? The emotional fuel has been removed, so reason can do its work. So take a current personal worry, something that feels tight and pressing in your chest. Close your eyes for a moment. First, just acknowledge the story as it is. Then, begin to pull the camera back. See the room you're in from above. See your street, your town. See the landscape from a great height. Contemplate the timeline. This week, this year, your lifetime, a century. How does the story of this event change with that distance? Does it shrink from a defining tragedy to a single thread in a vast tapestry? That shift in perspective is cognitive distancing in action. It's a practical way to withhold assent from the overwhelming version of the story, and to choose a more measured, more truthful judgment instead. You haven't solved the external problem, but you have reclaimed the internal space needed to address it wisely. The language you use in your own mind, it's not a neutral description, it's an act of creation. Every time you think, I am anxious, you're not describing a state. You're building an identity, you're merging your entire sense of self with a temporary mental event. That fusion gives the thought immense power. It becomes your truth. The Stoic practice of labeling, it's a deliberate act of linguistic surgery. It's the shift from saying I am anxious to saying I am noticing a thought about anxiety. The difference isn't semantic, it's psychological liberation. When you say I am angry, you and the anger are one. There's no space between the observer and the observed. You're lost in the storm, but when you say a feeling of anger is present, or I am having a thought that this is unfair, you've instantly created distance. You've turned the thought from the subject of your experience into an object you can look at. You're no longer the angry person. You are the awareness witnessing the arrival of an angry thought. This is the core of what Marcus Aurelius meant with the ruling faculty. He said the mind can not only choose its path, but it can observe itself choosing. It can step back and watch its own processes. That self-observation is the mechanism of freedom, and labeling is the practical tool that activates it. Think of your mind as a sky. Thoughts are weather. A storm cloud of worry moves in. If you say, I am the storm, you are drenched, tossed, blinded. But if you can look up and say, a storm cloud is passing through, everything changes. You are the sky, vast and unchanging, and the cloud is just a temporary visitor. It may be dark and loud, but it is not you. It cannot define you, it will pass. Labeling is how you remember you are the sky. Let's apply this to a corrosive pattern, self-criticism. The raw impression arrives after a mistake. You messed up. The unlabeled, fused version is the story, I am a failure. That sentence feels like a verdict. It weighs a ton. It shapes your entire mood and future actions. Now apply the label. The fact is, I made an error on that project. The labeled thought is, I am now having a thought that says this mistake makes me a failure. See what happens. The thought is put in quotation marks. It's framed. It's no longer a direct pipeline to your identity. It's just a sentence your mind generated, one of thousands it will produce today. You can look at it with curiosity. Oh, there's the I'm a failure story again. It tends to show up when I'm tired. This doesn't make the mistake disappear, but it completely disarms the secondary, emotional suffering, the shame and paralysis that came from believing the story. Here's a practice. For the rest of today, commit to a simple experiment. With the next 3 negative or difficult thoughts that arise, do not engage with their content. Don't argue with them, simply label them, out loud if you can, or silently in your mind. Someone cuts you off. Instead of I am furious, try, I am experiencing a thought that this driver is disrespectful. You receive critical feedback. Instead of I am incompetent, try, a thought about my incompetence has appeared. You worry about tomorrow. Instead of I am overwhelmed, try, there is a thought predicting overwhelm. Notice what shifts. Does the thought feel as solid, as permanent, as personally defining? The goal isn't to make the thought vanish. The goal is to change your relationship to it. To see it as a mental event, not as a command from reality. This tiny linguistic pivot is a master key. It unlocks the space between impression and assent. And in that space, you reclaim your sovereignty. You are not your thoughts. You are the aware space in which they come and go. A Stoic trains for the moment in the calm of their mind. That's the final piece. It turns the discipline of assent from a defensive skill into something proactive. It's called premeditation, but it's not worrying about what could go wrong. It's rehearsing your inner response, so when the storm arrives, you're not scrambling. You've already run the drill. The Stoics had a term, premeditatio malorum. The premeditation of challenges. Seneca wrote about this. He said we should picture the insults, the losses, the frustrations of the day ahead, not to dread them. To disarm them, by foreseeing a difficulty, you take away its greatest weapon, the element of surprise. When you're surprised, you're on autopilot. Your raw, reactive mind takes over. And it always assents to the first, most alarming story. But if you've already walked through the scenario, you've stationed your inner advisor at the gate. You've prepared your reasoned response. The event might still happen, but its power to hijack your judgment is gone. Think of a fire drill. No one hopes for a fire. But you practice the exit route, so if the alarm sounds, you don't freeze, you move with purpose. Premeditation is a mental fire drill. You're rehearsing the path of withholding rash assent. So when the real impression hits, your boss's tone, a sharp remark, you don't get burned by the initial flare. You follow your pre-planned route toward a calm judgment. Here's how to apply it. Choose a predictable stressor, maybe a weekly meeting that leaves you feeling defensive, or your commute in heavy traffic. In a quiet moment, close your eyes. Walk into that situation mentally, see it unfold, but here's the shift. Don't just watch the external events, watch your own mind. Anticipate the very first troubling impression that usually arises. In the meeting, it might be the thought, their question means they doubt my work. In traffic, this delay is ruining my evening. Now, script your ideal, reasoned response to that impression. This is you preparing your assent, or rather, your non-assent. Your response isn't about changing the other person or the traffic. It's about your internal agreement. You might rehearse thinking, the fact is they are asking a question. I will withhold assent from the story that this is a personal attack. I will listen for the information. Or for the traffic, the fact is the cars are moving slowly. I withhold assent from the story that this is a personal injustice. This is time I can use to listen to something. By doing this, you build neural pathways. You make the reasoned response more familiar, more automatic than the reactive one. When the real moment comes, your mind has a map. It knows the territory. It's far less likely to be shocked into a blind agreement. So here's a prompt. Choose one predictable daily stressor, just one. It could be the morning rush getting everyone out the door, or checking your work email. Mentally script your ideal, reasoned response to its first troubling impression. What is the bare fact you will commit to seeing? And what is the dramatic story you will practice withholding your assent from? This isn't positive thinking. It's prepared thinking. It's the ultimate training for the moment of choice. So when the impression arrives, your sovereignty is already awake. Your inner fortress is held. The discipline of assent, it's not only for negative thoughts, it's also the key to runaway desire. We think of stoicism for weathering storms, for handling anger or anxiety or loss. But its power is symmetrical. It works just as precisely on the sunny days, on that quiet whisper, the one that says, if I could just have that one thing, then I'd be content. That whisper is an impression, and the moment you agree with it, you've handed a piece of your future peace to something outside your control. Every desire starts as a suggestion. You see something, a new piece of technology, a promotion, a certain lifestyle. The impression arrives with a tagline. This will make me happy. This will solve a problem. This will make me feel complete. That's the story, and in the pause after that thought, you face the same choice as with fear. You can nod yes, you can assent to the promise. Or you can hold back, you can examine the contract. When you impulsively assent to a desire, you do more than want something. You create an attachment. You forge a chain between your tranquility and an external object. You are saying, my well-being depends on this thing I do not yet have. Epictetus framed desire in terms of control. He taught we should only desire what is up to us, because if you desire what is not up to you, you are doomed to disappointment. You place your happiness in the hands of fortune, which is famously fickle. The careful management of assent makes this possible. Before you chase something, you interrogate the initial impression. Is the happiness truly in the object? Or is it in the story I'm telling myself about the object? Take a common, modern desire, the craving for a new purchase, a sleek watch, a faster car, the latest phone. The impression is powerful. It's not just about function. The story is, this will elevate my status. This will make me feel successful. This will fill a vague sense of lack. If you assent immediately, you give that story full authority. The desire becomes urgent, it nags, it can make you restless or feel a subtle deprivation until you get it. Your emotional state is now yoked to an item on a shelf. Now apply the discipline, withhold your full assent. See the impression for what it is. The fact is, there is an object with certain features. The story is, acquiring it will produce lasting satisfaction. Put that story under review. Ask your inner advisor, is this true? Has a previous purchase delivered on this promise permanently? Or did the thrill fade, leaving the same underlying me once the novelty wore off? This isn't about denying yourself nice things. It's about freeing yourself from the illusion that they hold the keys to your happiness. You can still choose to buy the item, but you do so from a place of preference, not desperate need. You choose it rather than being commanded by it. The emotional charge is gone. The peace you were seeking in the object, you find instead in your own discernment. Epictetus offered a filter. He said, when you are about to undertake some action, remind yourself of what kind of action it is. If you are going out for a bath, picture what happens: the people splashing, the jostling, the stealing. And you will undertake the action more securely if you say, I want to bathe, but also to keep my will in harmony with nature. He was applying premeditation to desire. You desire the pleasure of the bath, but by assenting only to a balanced view, I want this, but I also accept the typical annoyances, you protect your peace. You desire the outcome without being enslaved by a fantasy of perfect, uninterrupted enjoyment. So here is a prompt. Look at a current desire in your life. Not a basic need, but a want for recognition, for a possession, for a specific experience. Isolate the specific promise you are assenting to. What is the core sentence? Is it, this will make me feel respected? Or this will finally make me enough? Write that sentence down. See it as the impression it is. Now, with that sentence in view, ask yourself gently, is my future contentment truly held hostage by this one condition? Or can I, by withholding my full belief in that story, pursue it lightly, or even let the wanting itself dissolve? And find that the peace I sought was never in the thing to begin with, but in the freedom of my own judgment. What we run from controls us just as much as what we run toward. And it's the same mechanism, assent. The discipline of assent isn't just about managing desire, it's also about aversion, the things we push away, the things we dread. In those moments, the impression comes with a different tag. It says, this will be unbearable, I can't handle this will ruin me. And when we say yes to that, we don't just feel fear. We build a prison. We hand our freedom over to the thing we're trying to escape. Aversion is desire in reverse. Instead of believing happiness is out there to be acquired, we believe safety is out there to be avoided. The mechanism is identical. A raw impression appears, a difficult conversation, a possible failure, a physical pain, and immediately the mind wraps it in a story. This will be humiliating, the pain will be too much, I'll fall apart. That story feels like a fact, a premonition, but it's just an impression, a suggestion. And the pivotal moment is when we either agree with its verdict or we pause, we examine it. Marcus Aurelius kept returning to this. He wrote that we must accept what nature brings. Not with grim resignation, but with clear-eyed assent to the reality itself. Stripped of the added judgment that it's intolerable, he said, do not feel harmed, and you have not been harmed. The harm isn't in the event, it's in your judgment that the event is harmful. Your agreement that it's unbearable is what makes it so. By withholding assent from that catastrophic label, you drain the situation of its imagined power. Its power to break you. Take a common fear, public speaking. The mere thought can tighten your stomach. That initial impression is visceral, but the emotion comes from the story we assent to right after. The impression might be, I have to give a talk. The immediate, automatic story is, I'll freeze, my mind will go blank, everyone will see me fail, I'll be humiliated. If you assent to that entire narrative, the fear becomes paralyzing. Your body reacts as if the humiliation is happening now. Avoidance seems like the only rational choice. Now practice withholding assent. See the story for what it is, a prediction, not a prophecy. Separate the fact from the frightening fiction. The fact is, I am scheduled to speak for 10 minutes to a group. The story is, this will end in total personal disgrace. Then, invite your inner advisor to cross-examine that story. Is it certain? Is it helpful? What's the actual evidence based on my past? Could a more reasonable, less catastrophic story also be true? Perhaps I may feel nervous, but I'm prepared. The audience is generally supportive. Even if I stumble, it's not a measure of my worth. By withholding full assent from the doomsday narrative, you don't magically erase the nervousness, but you remove the secondary layer, the terror about the terror. You face the situation with equanimity, not because it's easy, but because you've refused to agree that it's world-ending. You can walk toward the challenge. Not as a fearless hero, but as a person who understands the story of catastrophe is just that, a story you're no longer obligated to believe. So look at your own life. What's one thing you're actively avoiding? A difficult conversation you keep putting off? A creative project you're afraid to start? A social event that stirs anxiety? Look past the surface. Ask yourself, what's the worst-case scenario impression I've assented to? What's the specific sentence I've agreed is true? Is it, I will be rejected? Or I will prove I'm not good enough? Or the discomfort will overwhelm me? Write that sentence down. See it as the impression it is. Then, with the same discipline you'd apply to a craving, withhold your full belief. Question it, is this thought a fact or a fear? By loosening your assent to that catastrophic story, you don't necessarily make the task easy, but you reclaim the power to choose your action based on value. Not based on a fiction that's held you hostage. The thing you flee from only controls you if you agree it's a monster. See it clearly, and you might find it's just a shadow. One thought you agree with is a domino. It can start a chain, and that chain builds a whole movie in your head, a movie you believe is real. That's the slippery slope. The discipline of assent, it's not just about that first yes. It's about seeing how a single agreement can trigger a reaction. It sets off a search. Your mind looks for evidence, for related thoughts that all seem to confirm the first story. Once your mind has a premise it believes, it becomes a detective finding clues to prove itself right. And with each new piece of evidence you agree with, the narrative gains mass. It gains momentum. It becomes a mood, a whole atmosphere you carry. Seneca described this with anger. He said it starts with an impression of an injury. You assent to that. You agree, yes, I've been wronged. But then, he writes, it calls for vengeance. That's another impression. You assent again. Then it says the injury must be avenged at all costs. Another assent. With each step, the emotion amplifies itself. You're no longer reacting to the original event. You're reacting to the furious story you've been building. Thought by thought, assent by assent, the anger feeds on its own logic. It becomes a self-perpetuating storm. Take a quieter cascade. A friend is 15 minutes late for coffee. The initial impression is simple. They are not here. The first story your mind suggests, and you might agree to, is they don't value my time. That's the first domino. You agree. Now, the emotional reaction sets in, a low-grade irritation. But your mind isn't done. It starts looking for proof. It pulls up a related impression from 2 weeks ago. They cancelled plans last minute. You assent to the connection. You think, see, this is a pattern. Another domino falls, then another thought. They probably wouldn't be late for their other friends. Assent, another domino. Before you know it, the single event of their lateness has spawned a full narrative. This friendship is one-sided. I am always the one who cares more. I am being taken for granted. You've built an entire internal movie about the state of your relationship, and you're living in the emotional reality of that movie, all before your friend arrives to offer an explanation. The mood of resentment you feel wasn't caused by the lateness. It was constructed, brick by brick, through a series of small, unquestioned ascents. You moved from a fact they are not here at the agreed time to a sweeping, painful story about your worth. The domino effect turned a neutral circumstance into a source of suffering. So think of a recent time your mood shifted downward for what seemed like no major reason. A morning that turned sour, an evening of quiet anxiety. Try to map the cascade backwards. What was the final feeling? Now, what was the thought just before that? And the one before that, trace it back like a detective following a trail of dominoes. Your goal is to find the first one, the initial impression you assented to that started the whole chain. It might have been incredibly small, a fleeting thought about an email, a memory of an offhand comment. Identify that first domino, just seeing the sequence, how one thought led to the next and built a whole false reality. That's a revelation. It shows you the mood isn't a weather system that just arrived. You were an active, though unconscious, architect in its construction, and that means you have the power, by catching that first ascent, to choose a different design. An impression comes in, demanding you believe it. Don't just give your belief, cross-examine it. That's the practical heart of the discipline, that pause we've talked about. It's not an empty space. It's a courtroom, and you are the judge. The impression is the witness making a dramatic claim. Your job is to test that testimony before you deliver any verdict. The Stoics, Epictetus especially, gave us questions for this cross-examination, a structured inquiry to separate truth from persuasive fiction. The first question is the most famous. It cuts to the core. Is this within my control? Epictetus built his entire philosophy on this division. So when an impression arrives, shouting that something is terrible or wonderful, you ask immediately, does my agreeing with this story change the thing itself? If the answer is no, if the event or the other person's opinion is outside your control, then your agreement is misplaced energy. Your power isn't in changing the uncontrollable. It's in choosing your judgment about it. This question instantly deflates impressions about the past, about other people's actions, about external outcomes. It redirects your focus to the only ground you can ever hold, your own reasoned choice. The second question goes deeper. Is this impression an objective fact, or is it my interpretation? We covered this earlier, stripping away the legend. Here, you make it a direct interrogation. You take the loaded statement and break it into pieces. The fact is the sensory data. The interpretation is the story you've layered on top. My boss used a sharp tone. That's a possible fact, something you heard. The interpretation is, she is angry with me and thinks I'm doing a bad job. The first might be true. The second is a story you've authored. This question forces you to own your authorship, to see where you've moved from observation to invention. Third, you ask a question of value. Is this belief useful for my character? Does agreeing with this thought make me more courageous, more temperate, more wise? The Stoics were pragmatists about thought. An impression isn't just true or false, it's helpful or harmful. Even if there's a grain of truth in the story, does clinging to it serve your growth? The thought, I always fail at this, might feel true in a moment of discouragement, but is it useful? Does it lead to resilience and effort, or to resignation and avoidance? If a belief weakens you, the Stoic practice is to set it aside, regardless of its superficial accuracy. You choose thoughts that build the person you wish to be. Finally, you invoke a higher perspective. What would a wise person assent to here? Epictetus constantly asked his students this. Imagine someone you admire for their composure and integrity. A historical figure, a mentor, an archetype of wisdom. In this situation, facing this impression, what judgment would they form? This question lifts you out of your immediate emotional self. It lets you consult a calmer, more distant version of your own mind. It's a shortcut to the view from above, made personal. Let's apply this to a real impression. The thought, my project was criticized, therefore I am incompetent. The feeling is shame, a sinking weight. Now enter the courtroom. First, is this within my control? The criticism that was given is in the past. I cannot control that. I can control my response to it and my future work. So my assent should be directed there, not to a fixed label of incompetence. Second, fact or interpretation. The fact is, specific feedback was provided on my project. The interpretation is, this feedback means I am fundamentally incompetent. The first is true. The second is a catastrophic overgeneralization from a single event. Third, is this belief useful? Does believing I am incompetent help me improve? No, it paralyzes. A more useful belief might be, I received difficult feedback, which is an opportunity to learn and strengthen this work. Fourth, the wise person. What would someone wise assent to? They would likely see the feedback as data, not identity. They would feel the sting, but then move quickly to curiosity. What can I learn here? Where can I grow? Their assent would be given to a narrative of growth, not one of personal annihilation. The impression loses its case. Its emotional power dissolves under reasoned inquiry. So here is your prompt. Think of one lingering negative thought from this week, a recurring worry, a resentment, a self-doubt. Take out a piece of paper or just open a note on your phone. Write down the thought exactly as it appears in your mind. Then put it on trial. Ask it these 4 questions in order. Write down your honest answers. 1. Is this within my control? 2. Is this an objective fact or my interpretation? 3. Is believing this useful for my character? 4. What would a wise person believe here? You don't need to force a positive answer. Just the act of asking changes everything. It shifts you from a passive receiver of thoughts to an active investigator of your own mind. And in that shift, you reclaim the gavel. You become the judge of what deserves your belief and what deserves only a quiet dismissal. The discipline of assent isn't just defensive. It's also how you choose who you want to be. We've talked about withholding agreement from unhelpful stories, but the mechanism works the other way too. You can consciously give your assent to a different kind of impression, one that aligns with courage or fairness or resilience, even when it's difficult. This is the proactive side. It's not about denying what you feel. It's about choosing which feeling you will endorse, which possible version of yourself you empower with your belief. Think of your character as a garden. Withholding assent is pulling weeds. It's necessary, but if you only pull weeds, the garden stays empty. To cultivate something, you have to plant seeds. You have to nurture the growth you want. Assenting to virtue is that planting. You see a situation. It could go one of 2 ways. Your initial impression might be fear. But alongside it, there's another impression, a suggestion of strength, a hint of patience. Your power is in which one you agree with, which seed you water with your attention and belief. Marcus Aurelius had an insight on this. He wrote, "Pretend you already possess the virtue you seek. Act as if you are already courageous or already patient. Because eventually you will find you have become so." This isn't about faking it. It's about the neurological truth of assent. When you act as if you are calm, you are first assenting to the possibility that calmness is an option. You override the automatic story of panic. You sign a contract with a better version of the event, and with each repetition, that neural pathway, the one for a calm response, gets stronger. It becomes more familiar than the old panic route. You are, through deliberate assent, sculpting your character. Here's a practical example. You're about to join a stressful video call. A project is behind, tension is high. Your body's initial impression is tightness in your chest. The automatic story is, I'm going to be blamed. I need to get defensive. This is a disaster. That's one impression shouting for your agreement, but there is another. a softer voice. It suggests I can listen first. I can respond with clarity, not fear. I can be a stabilizing presence. The discipline is to recognize you have a choice between these two. You can, in that moment before you speak, actively assent to the second one. You can internally agree, yes, I will choose to respond with clarity. Then you act as if that is who you are. You sit up straight. You take a breath. You listen. Your first words are measured. You are not pretending to be someone else. You are choosing through your assent which version of yourself gets to lead. This works for smaller moments. You're in a long line at the store. The person ahead is taking forever. The initial impression is frustration. The story is, this is wasting my time. But you can pause. You can spot the alternative impression, the one that suggests this is an opportunity to practice patience. I can use this minute to just breathe. And you can give your assent to that. You can nod yes to patience. Your posture relaxes. Your irritation loses its fuel. You haven't changed the line. You've changed your experience of it, and in doing so, you've strengthened your capacity for patience for next time. So here's a challenge for your next interaction. It could be with a coworker, a family member, a stranger. Before you engage, ask yourself, what single virtuous impression could I choose to assent to here? Regardless of my initial feeling, could it be generosity when you feel like being frugal with your praise? Could it be curiosity when you feel like being dismissive? Could it simply be presence when you feel the pull to be distracted? Identify that one quality, and in the moment make the conscious choice. Give your mental agreement to that story. Act even in a small way as if that virtue is already yours to express. Notice what shifts, not in the other person but in you. This is how character is built. Not in grand declarations, but in 1,000 small assents, each one a quiet vote for the person you are deciding to become. Your body can send you signals that feel like truth. A tightness in your chest, a racing heart, it feels like proof. We often think that if the body reacts, the thought must be real, but Stoicism asks you to question that link. It shows you a loop, a feedback loop between what you feel and what you agree with, and you can learn to interrupt it. Here's how it works. You have a troubling thought. You give it your assent. You agree, say, that a work deadline is a catastrophe. That agreement triggers a physical response, stress hormones, your muscles tense. Your breath gets short. These are real sensations. Now the loop closes. Those sensations become new impressions. Your mind notices the tight chest, the quick pulse. And it weaves a second story around them. This anxiety means the danger is real. My panic is evidence I'm failing. You assent to that second story, and that new agreement sends a stronger command to your nervous system. It amplifies the symptoms, which then create more alarming impressions. It's a spiral. A thought creates a feeling, and the feeling is used as proof to justify more extreme thinking. The Stoic move is to break the chain at the sensation, to see the physical feeling not as evidence but as a separate event, a neutral physiological occurrence. Epictetus talked about being startled by a sudden noise. The jump, the gasp, that's an automatic reflex. It's not an assent. The assent comes after with the judgment you add. Oh, that was a threat. I'm in danger. He taught that you can experience the initial shock without adding the fearful story. You can separate the bodily reaction from the catastrophic interpretation. Your body reacts to many things that aren't real danger. Caffeine, lack of sleep, low blood sugar, even excitement before a happy event. All these can produce sensations identical to anxiety. A flutter in the stomach, restlessness, a quickened pulse. If you automatically assent to the impression that these feelings mean something is wrong, you inject mental suffering into a simple physical state. You turn a chemical event into an emotional crisis. Take a common scenario. You feel a flutter of nervousness 5 minutes before an important meeting. The initial impression is a somatic feeling, a slight tremor in your hands. The unexamined, automatic assent is to a story. This feeling means I'm not ready. I'm going to embarrass myself. That story, once believed, sends more adrenaline into your system. The flutter becomes a shake, your mind races, the loop is engaged. Now practice the interruption, feel the flutter, acknowledge it, but withhold assent from the story about failure. Instead, apply a different, more factual label. This is a surge of energy. My body is preparing to focus. This sensation is neutral. It's the same energy athletes feel before a race. It is not a verdict on my ability. By refusing to catastrophize the sensation, you prevent the second wave of panic. The physical feeling may remain, but it's stripped of its narrative power. It becomes just a sensation passing through. It does not define the reality of the situation. So here's a practice. Choose one moment when you notice a bodily signal of stress. A clenched jaw while driving, a knot in your stomach while checking email. Observe it with curiosity, like a scientist noting a phenomenon. Then consciously pause before you assign it any meaning. Don't assent to the first story that arises. The story that this tension means the day is ruined, or that this knot means you can't handle what's coming. See if you can hold the sensation and the story as two separate things. The sensation is just a sensation. The story is an optional interpretation. In that space of separation, the feedback loop breaks. The sensation loses its authority to dictate your emotional state. You reclaim the right to decide what your body's signals actually mean. The future isn't a fact. It's an impression, and when we treat it as certain, we give up our peace. We do this all the time. We take something that hasn't happened yet, a job interview, a medical test, a hard conversation, and we treat the story we tell about it like it's already written. We read the lines in our head, we nod along. We give our full agreement to a narrative that hasn't happened. We mortgage our present calm to a phantom. The Stoics saw this as a main source of human distress. Our ability to travel forward in time with our thoughts is a gift. But when we assent to those journeys as reality, it becomes a trap. The discipline is to challenge that illusion of certainty, to see that every judgment about the future is by nature provisional. It's a hypothesis, not a truth, and we can choose to withhold our final signature. Seneca put the cost perfectly. He said we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Think about that. The anxiety you feel days before a presentation is almost always worse than the experience itself. The dread before a difficult talk is more corrosive than the conversation. Why? Because in our imagination, we assent to the worst-case version. We agree it's real, and we live inside that agreed-upon reality. We feel the humiliation, the rejection, the loss, as if it were happening now. Our body reacts. We're suffering from a story we wrote and then mistakenly certified as fact. The future event is uncertain, but our agreement with the painful prediction is a present, self-inflicted certainty. We've chosen to feel the pain twice, once in anticipation, and once, if it even happens, in the event itself. The Stoic focus on the present moment isn't about ignoring the future. It's about recognizing the only ground you ever stand on is right now. Your plans, your preparations, those are present actions. Your worries, your fantasies, those are present thoughts. And your assent is a present choice. You can't control an outcome that doesn't exist. You can only control the judgments you form about it in this moment. So when the impression arrives, this will be a disaster. You have the same tool. You pause, you see it as an impression about the future, and you consciously withhold your full, final agreement. You might say to it, you are one possibility among many. I will not grant you the status of prophecy. Contrast two internal approaches. The first is full assent to a known negative outcome. The thought, my job interview tomorrow will go badly. I will stumble. They'll see I'm not qualified. When you assent to that, you've written the ending. Your confidence crumbles. Your preparation feels futile. You walk in already defeated by a story you believed. The second is withholding that final assent. The impression is acknowledged. I have an interview tomorrow. It might be challenging, but the judgment you consciously choose is open-ended. I will prepare to the best of my ability. The outcome involves factors outside my control. I will meet the moment with focus and integrity, whatever happens. You haven't guaranteed success. You've simply refused to guarantee failure. You've placed your assent on your present actions and your adaptable character, not on a fixed, frightening future. The emotional difference is profound. One path is paved with anticipatory anxiety. The other is paved with purposeful readiness. So here's a reflective prompt. Identify one future event you're treating as a certainty, especially a negative one. What's the sentence you've secretly agreed to? Is it, my proposal will be rejected? Or, this trip will be stressful and exhausting? Or, they won't understand what I'm trying to say? Write that sentence down. Now, rewrite your internal assent. Transform it from a declaration of certainty into a statement of open, uncertain engagement. Change my proposal will be rejected to I will present my proposal clearly, and the response is not yet known. Change this trip will be exhausting to travel, can be demanding, and I will navigate each step as it comes. Feel the shift in your body as you read the new version. The first one feels like a sentence. The second one feels like a path. It returns your power to the only place it ever was, your next choice, your next breath, this present moment where you are actually alive. Our reputation, those impressions seem to stick the hardest. They need real scrutiny before we agree with them. You can see a traffic jam and feel detached, or a delayed flight as time to read. But a remark about your character, a perceived slight, some gossip you think is about you that's different. It hooks into something deep, the part that wants to belong, to be respected, to be seen as good. And because of that, these impressions are masters of disguise. They don't feel like just thoughts. They feel like urgent social realities. This is where the discipline of assent faces its most subtle test. Another person's opinion, it's an external. By its nature, it lives in their mind, which is a territory you can never fully enter. You can't control it. Epictetus drilled this into his students. If someone calls you a donkey, he said, you're not disturbed by the sound they made. You're disturbed by your own judgment. Your agreement that this sound matters. You've assented to the idea that their label defines you, that their disapproval changes your worth. When you think, they think I'm foolish, and you nod yes to that story you've handed a stranger, or a colleague, or some vague audience in your mind, the keys to your inner citadel. You've let a sound, or a look, or a piece of text become the landlord of your emotional state. That's why Epictetus was so uncompromising on insults and praise. He saw them as two sides of the same coin. Both are just other people's expressions. To be elated by praise is to be just as enslaved as to be crushed by criticism. Your peace becomes contingent on the shifting winds of other people's opinions, which you can't command. His advice was to receive both with the same quiet acknowledgement. Thank someone for praise, but don't internalize it as a core truth. Hear an insult, but don't grant it the status of a verdict. In both cases, you're hearing a report about someone else's internal world. Not a report about your own soul. Take a common impression, the thought after a meeting. I looked stupid in that moment. Everyone saw me fumble. The heat of embarrassment is real. But you pause, you dissect it with your inner advisor. What's the actual, controllable fact? Your preparation was within your control. Your intent to contribute was within your control. The words you chose to say, even if they didn't come out perfectly, were within your control. These are the proper subjects of your reflection and your resolve to improve if it's needed. Now, what's the external story you're tempted to assent to? The story is, my colleagues now hold a permanent judgment of my incompetence. Their private thoughts are broadcasting a negative verdict about me. That story is a fiction. It's a guess about the contents of other minds which are unknown and ungovernable. By assenting to it, you're choosing to live inside a painful hypothetical. You're renting space in your own mind to a phantom jury. The Stoic move is to withhold assent from that phantom, to acknowledge the bare event, I wish I had phrased that better, and then consciously redirect your agreement to what is yours. I am learning, I will prepare more next time. My worth is not decided by a single moment in a conference room. The emotional charge it begins to dissipate when you stop feeding the story of universal judgment. It becomes a specific event to learn from, not a global condemnation to cower under. So here's a prompt. Think back to a recent time you felt slighted or overlooked or embarrassed. It doesn't have to be large, a conversation where you felt talked over, a social media post that got little response, a joke that didn't land. Look past the feeling. Identify the specific impression about another's judgment that you assented to in that moment. What was the core sentence you agreed with? Was it, "They think I'm boring"? Or, "My contribution wasn't valuable"? Or, "I am invisible to them"? Write that sentence down. See it as the impression it is, a story about an external you cannot control. Then gently ask yourself, by giving my agreement to this story, what power did I hand over, and what would it feel like to take that signature back? Your discipline of assent is sculpting your brain. Every choice to pause is forging a new pathway, and this isn't just philosophy, it's biology. Your mind has a physical structure, a network of connections that fire based on what you practice. So every time you encounter a stressful impression and you automatically agree with its story, you're not just having a thought, you're deepening a neural groove. You're making that reactive path the easier road for your mind to travel next time. This is neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to rewire itself based on repeated experience. Those well-worn ruts of anxiety, of quick anger, of spiraling self-doubt, they aren't character flaws. They're highways you've paved through thousands of unnoticed ascents. The Stoics spoke constantly of training. They called philosophy a way of life, not a set of ideas. And now we understand the mechanism behind that. When Epictetus told his students to practice meeting each disturbing impression with a pause, he was prescribing a neurological workout. He was telling them to stop using the old, destructive pathways and to start blazing new trails. Each time you successfully withhold assent from an unhelpful story, you're not just having a good moment. You're physically weakening the connection between that trigger and that reaction. And each time you consciously choose a reasoned judgment, you're strengthening a new connection. You're building a healthier rut, a path of resilience. Think of it like learning a language. The first time you try to form a sentence in a new language, it's slow. Awkward, you have to think about every word, but with practice the phrases start to flow automatically. The neural pathways for that language have been built. Your emotional responses work the same way. The first time you try to pause and question an angry impression, it feels forced, unnatural. The old highway of rage is wide and inviting. But with each repetition of that pause, the new path, the one of calm assessment, gets a little clearer, a little more worn. Eventually, it becomes the road more traveled. It becomes your default. This transforms how you see your own reactions. That flash of irritation in traffic tomorrow morning, don't see it as a failure. See it as a repetition, a rep, like a single lift at the gym. The weight is the impression. Your pause and reassessment is the lift. The muscle you're building is your capacity for wise assent. Some days the weight feels heavier, some days your form is off, but every conscious effort counts. It all adds to the structural change happening beneath your awareness. So the next time you feel that familiar spark, before you judge yourself for feeling it, try this. Acknowledge the impression, then internally label the moment. Call it an opportunity for neural renovation. This isn't a setback, it's the raw material for your training. Your mind is presenting you with the exact weight you need to grow stronger. Will you take the old, easy path down the well-worn rut? Or will you, just for this one rep, choose the harder work of building something new? That choice, repeated, is what quietly remakes a brain. And in doing so, it remakes a life. Stoic assent isn't about shutting down feeling. It's about choosing which feelings you're going to believe. And that choice, when you apply it to yourself or to other people, becomes a kind of kindness. It's not cold detachment, it's a clear compassion. When you don't agree with a harsh story, you're not rejecting the emotion, you're protecting yourself. You're saying this story doesn't help me grow, it doesn't help me understand someone else, it doesn't deserve my yes. Think about that voice after you make a mistake. The one that says you always mess up, that you're careless, what's wrong with you? That voice offers an impression, a story about who you are, and in a moment of shame, the automatic thing is to agree. To nod along with that condemnation, but that agreement isn't true and it isn't useful. It's taking one event and blowing it up into your whole identity. It doesn't lead to getting better. It leads to freezing, to pulling back from the next thing because you're afraid you'll just prove the story you just agreed with. The kind move is to catch that impression, to see the thought, I am a failure, for what it is. It's just mental noise in a hard moment, and then to consciously not give your assent to that crushing label. In the space that opens up, you can offer a different judgment to agree with, one that comes from a place of wisdom. The fact is, I made an error. The useful judgment is, errors are part of learning. What can I understand from this? How can I adjust? By saying yes to this second story, you haven't denied the mistake. You've denied the story that the mistake defines you. You've traded beating yourself up for asking a kinder question. That's where real improvement starts, not from hating your old self, but from a clear, kind commitment to your better self. This same idea works when you judge other people. Stoic justice isn't just about actions in the world, it's about giving people a fair hearing in your own mind. When someone cuts you off in traffic, the first impression comes with a whole story. That person is rude, selfish, reckless. To immediately agree with that story is to pass a final verdict on a stranger based on 2 seconds of their life. It's a small injustice. You've denied them the complexity you'd want for yourself. The compassionate practice is to withhold that snap agreement, to let the impression wait, like Epictetus said. To allow for another story. Maybe they didn't see you, maybe they're rushing to an emergency, maybe they're having the worst day and their focus is gone. You don't have to know which one is true. The act of not fully agreeing with the worst interpretation is itself a kind of grace. It stops you from building a fortress of resentment against a phantom. It keeps your own mind clear, free of unnecessary hostility. So the next time you hear that inner critic after a stumble, pause, hear the sentence it's trying to sell you. Then gently refuse to buy it. In its place, write a sentence you can agree with honestly and kindly. Change, I'm so stupid for forgetting that too. Forgetting things happens. I'll put a better system in place. Change, I embarrassed myself in that meeting too. I felt flustered. I can prepare a talking point for next time. Notice the emotion that follows each one. The first drags you down. The second, while it acknowledges what happened, lifts you toward a solution. Your assent is the lever. You choose which emotional direction to validate, and in doing that, you aren't building a wall against feeling. You're building a doorway toward a wiser, more compassionate way of being. For yourself and for everyone whose path crosses yours. Regret is about the past, anxiety is about the future, and your ability to give healthy assent that only happens right now in this moment. That's the anchor. It's the only ground you can actually stand on. You can't go back and undo a contract you signed yesterday. That moment is over, and you can't sign a contract for a thought that hasn't arrived. That moment hasn't come. This whole discipline of assent, this sovereignty over your mind, it works in a very thin slice of time, the now, that space between when an impression shows up and your judgment about it. That's where your freedom is. That's the only place you can use it. When you're lost in rumination, replaying a conversation where you agreed to jealousy, you're trying to live in a ghost. You're trying to renegotiate a deal that's already closed. The ink is dry. The feeling was already felt. To dwell there is to give your present peace to a phantom. It's a double loss, and when you're caught in anxiety, rehearsing for a future insult, you're drafting contracts for impressions that don't exist yet. You're practicing your signature for a document that hasn't been written. Both regret and worry, they're forms of mental time travel. They abandon the only post you're meant to guard, which is the present. Marcus Aurelius came back to this anchor all the time. In his private writings, he wasn't planning next year's strategies. He was bringing himself back again and again to the task right in front of him. To the impression before him right now, he wrote reminders: confine yourself to the present. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. That wasn't morbid, it was a grounding technique. He was saying the past is memory, the future is imagination. The only real thing, the only thing you can actually work with, is this immediate moment. Your current breath, the feeling of your body in the chair, the next impression coming through the door of your mind. Think of the contrast. Yesterday, in a meeting, you felt a flash of insecurity when a colleague spoke. You agreed to the story that your idea wasn't as good. For the rest of the day, you ruminated. You replayed the moment, feeling the shame again. You were assenting to the memory of the impression long after the event was over. That's living in the ghost. Now, in this present second, the meeting is a memory. The regret is just another impression visiting you now. The practice is to notice that current impression of regret without automatically agreeing with its story that you failed. You bring your focus to your current breath. You feel the air moving in and out. You notice the next impression arising. Maybe it's a thought about dinner. You meet that new impression fresh in the present with your capacity for clear judgment intact. You haven't erased the past. You've just returned to the only time zone where you have any agency. This is the deep link between Stoic assent and mindfulness. It's not about emptying the mind. It's about being fully present to its contents as they arise, so you can choose your relationship to them. It's active, discerning presence. So let's try a brief exercise right where you are. For the next 30 seconds, let everything else fall away. Don't try to change anything. Just notice, feel the weight of your body where it touches the chair or the floor. Notice the temperature of the air on your skin. Listen to the sounds around you without calling them good or bad. Now turn your attention inward. Watch the stream of your thoughts. See them as mental events passing through. A thought about this exercise, a memory. A planning thought about later. See each one appear, and as you see it, practice withholding your immediate, automatic agreement with its story. Just note, there's a thought about work, and let it pass by like a leaf on a stream. You are not in the past, you are not in the future, you are here, and in this here you are the aware space, the watcher, the one who gets to decide what deserves your assent. That power is never somewhere else, it is always and only now. The language in your head builds your reality. Each word is a brick, and some bricks are heavy. They're made of lead. They make a feeling seem solid, immovable, true. Words like always or never, catastrophe, ruined, horrible. These aren't just descriptions. They're amplifiers. They take a simple impression and give it a megaphone, flashing lights. They make it hard to ignore, almost impossible to question. Your agreement becomes a reflex because the language has already declared the verdict. Stoic thinking asks for precise language. Exaggerated terms are the enemy. Absolute words, they're emotional hijackers disguised as facts. This is where modern psychology meets that old wisdom. They call it cognitive diffusion. Separating yourself from your thoughts by changing your relationship to the words. The Stoics were masters of this. They practiced it. They stripped away the dramatic language around an event. Marcus Aurelius told himself to see things naked, to see the thing itself, separate from the story. The first step is to disarm the language. You can't see a situation clearly if you've already called it a disaster. That word carries a script: panic, helplessness. But if you call it a difficult situation, something shifts. The volume drops. The impression becomes something you can look at. You can hold it, examine it. Difficult situation is a problem to be solved. Disaster is a fate to be endured. Your choice of words shapes what you feel compelled to agree with. Think of your internal voice as a negotiator. One negotiator uses inflamed language, absolute. They walk in and say, "This is completely ruined. You always mess up. This is a nightmare." The other negotiator uses measured language, accurate. They say, "This is a significant setback. I made a mistake this time. This is very uncomfortable." Which one are you more likely to believe? Which one invites a calm discussion? The first shuts down reason. It demands immediate surrender, your full, frantic agreement. The second opens a door. It says, "Let's look at this." It makes withholding your immediate agreement possible, sensible even, so you build a translation guide. These are the red flag words. They signal an impression is wearing armor. And here are the alternatives, the phrases that let you breathe. When your mind says disaster or catastrophe, translate it. Challenge or significant difficulty. When it says ruined or destroyed, try setback, interrupted. When it says horrible or terrible, try uncomfortable. Painful. When it says always or never, fact check it. Is it often? Sometimes. Is it not yet? Rarely. When it says I can't stand this, question it. Is it this is very hard? This is testing my limits. The power isn't in positive thinking. It's in accurate thinking. The word challenge contains effort, growth. The word disaster contains only wreckage. By changing the word, you aren't denying the hardship. You're denying the story of total annihilation. The story your panicked mind is selling. You're calling its bluff. So here's a prompt. Replay a recent internal monologue from a moment of stress, maybe from today. Hear the sentence that carried the most weight. Now isolate the one absolute word in it. The never, the ruined, the failure. Cross it out mentally. In its place, write a word that's more measured, more specific, truer to the actual event. If the sentence was, "I'll never get this right," change it to, "I haven't figured this out yet." If it was, "This traffic has ruined my entire day," change it to, "This traffic is a major inconvenience." Say the new sentence aloud. Feel the difference in your body. The first version demands your despair. The second just reports the facts, and in that report, it gives you back your choice. It returns the gavel to your hand. We can train our assent to move toward what's good, not just away from what's bad. That's the foundation of Stoic joy. Up to now, the discipline has been a shield. It's how you protect your peace. You question painful impressions before you agree with them. But that same mechanism, that power of choice, is also how you build something deeper. A more durable contentment. It's the tool for cultivation, for planting seeds of gratitude in an ordinary day, because a positive impression is still just an impression. The warmth of sunlight, the taste of a meal, the presence of someone you care about, these arrive as sensory data, just like a critical comment, just like a worrying headline. They're neutral until you pass judgment, until you give your assent. The automatic mind often lets them pass by. It's scanning for threats, for problems to solve. But you can choose to stop, to arrest that positive impression, to look at it and say, "Yes, I agree this is good. I assent to its value," and in that agreement you change a passing sensation. You turn it into a felt experience of gratitude. This was a core practice for Marcus Aurelius. In his private writings, he didn't just argue down his fears. He actively listed what he could appreciate: his health, the lessons from his teachers, the beauty of nature. He was performing a deliberate act of assent. He was taking the raw impressions of good in his life and consciously endorsing them, giving them his full, grateful agreement. he wrote about rising with the sun. He'd immediately reflect on the gift it was to be alive, to be able to act with purpose. That wasn't naive optimism. It was trained perception. He was directing the spotlight of his attention and his agreement toward what life had already given him. Not to ignore the difficulties, but to properly weigh the scales, to see the whole picture, not just the shadowed parts. Think of how this works in a simple moment. You're holding a cup of coffee. The automatic mind registers it as fuel, a task, but you pause. You feel the warmth in your hands. You notice the smell. The impression is there. Now you consciously assent to a new story about it. This isn't just caffeine. This is a small pleasure, a moment of quiet, a gift. You give your mental agreement to that narrative, and in doing so, you don't just have a coffee. You experience a moment of gratitude. The external object is the same. Your inner world is richer. You've used your discipline not as a defense, but as a way to receive a gift life was already offering. The practice makes this sustainable. It's not about waiting for grand blessings. It's about assenting to the minor ones that are everywhere. Once you decide to look for them, the fact that your body carried you through the day, that you had clean water, that a stranger held a door, each of these is an impression. You can let it vanish into the stream of unnoticed data, or you can catch it. Hold it and agree with its inherent goodness. So here's a concrete application. At the end of your day, before sleep, try this. Recall one simple, positive impression from the last 24 hours. It must be small, the way light fell through a window, the sound of rain, a sentence in a book, a task you completed. Now replay that impression in your mind. And then consciously give it your full, grateful assent. Form the thought deliberately. I agree that this was a good thing. I am thankful for this moment. You are not manufacturing a feeling. You are choosing to validate a real piece of your experience, one your busy mind otherwise would have discarded. You are telling your nervous system, this too is part of the story. This too is real and it matters, and you can start this right now. Pause for just 10 seconds. Look around your immediate environment. Find one thing. It could be the device you're watching this on, a marvel of connection, the chair supporting you, a plant on a shelf quietly turning light into life, a photograph that holds a memory. See it, really see it. That's the impression. Now, internally, give your assent. Agree with its value. Think, I am grateful for this. Notice the subtle shift, a softening, a gentle warmth. That is your discipline of assent, actively building joy. Brick by grateful brick. Theory is easy when things are quiet, but when you're already angry or afraid, when your heart's pounding and your thoughts are just heat, that pause we talked about can seem impossible. The discipline still matters, but you're starting somewhere else. You're not starting from calm. You're starting in a flood, and the first goal isn't wisdom. It's damage control. It's to make any pause at all, however small, to stop the automatic agreement that's feeding the fire. Seneca wrote about anger this way. He said the best cure for anger is delay. When you feel that first heat, grant yourself nothing right then. Don't speak. Don't act, just wait. That's the physical way to withhold assent. You're not agreeing the situation needs your raw reaction. You're buying time for your inner advisor to wake up inside the storm. That delay, that forced space, is the first victory. It's you saying, I don't trust my judgments right now. I need a moment before I sign anything. So steps for when you're in the heat, maybe in an argument. First, stop talking. That's non-negotiable. Your words now are weapons you'll regret. Just stop. Second, take one deep breath on purpose. Feel the air come in and go out. This isn't about calming down right away. It's about breaking the rhythm of reaction with your body. Third, in your mind, use the simplest label. Don't analyze the other person. Label your own state. Think, this is the impression of rage, or this is the feeling of being flooded. Naming it makes a sliver of distance between you and the emotion. Finally, postpone the talk. Say, if you can, I need a moment. I want to discuss this, but I need to collect my thoughts. Then leave physically. Go to another room. Step outside. This isn't running. It's a retreat to higher ground. You're refusing to fight on the enemy's terrain, which is raw, reactive emotion. Leaving lets the physiological surge start to fade. Only then, when the floodwaters have gone down a bit, can you start the real work. You can look at the impressions that triggered you. You can separate fact from story. You can decide what, if anything, gets your reasoned agreement. So the prompt is this: don't wait for the next storm. Plan your emergency pause ritual now. What's one physical action you can take to force that first delay? It might be excusing yourself to get water. It might be feeling your feet on the floor. It might be a signal you agree on with someone. Decide on it and rehearse it mentally. See yourself in a frustrating spot, feeling the rise, and then starting your ritual. That rehearsal builds the pathway, so when the heat comes, you have an escape hatch ready for your better judgment. Your future self, after the storm, will be glad you built it. Your news feed is just this constant flow of impressions, and each one is built to get an emotional yes from you right away. Your discipline has to be the filter. It's a kind of modern battleground for a Stoic mindset. It isn't passive scrolling. It's more like running a gauntlet of suggestions, every single one trying to win your agreement. Outrage, fear, envy, that tribal feeling these emotions spread. Not because the content itself is so powerful, but because we give our assent so fast. We see a headline, just a piece of a story, and in a heartbeat we've signed the contract. We've agreed to its framing, and then you feel it, the heat, the judgment, this urgency to react. That's groupthink, but amplified, weaponized. It's the collective surrender of our own ability to pause, to question. Epictetus had this principle. He said we're disturbed not by things, but by the views we take of them. So the post, the tweet, the viral clip, that's just an external event. It's light on a screen. The disturbance comes from the view you take, the story you agree to tell yourself. The whole business model of the algorithm is built on capturing that quick, unexamined assent. It feeds on your emotional engagement, and your peace is what gets lost. So the practice is the same, but the environment is more aggressive now. You have to treat every piece of content as a sophisticated impression. It comes pre-packaged with a judgment already attached. Your job is to intercept it, to apply the checkpoint before you feel compelled to share it or comment or let it change your mood. Take a common scenario. You're scrolling and you see a divisive headline about some public figure. The impression is immediate. It suggests corruption or hypocrisy or just stupidity. There's that little flare, anger, or maybe a sense of superiority. That's the offer. The old, untrained version of you might assent instantly. You'd feel the righteous indignation. You might even tap to amplify it, passing that impression, and your agreement with it along to other people. The practiced version engages the discipline. You feel the pull, but you create the pause. You ask your inner advisor those same questions, just tailored for this digital space. First, do I have the full context? This headline is a summary of a summary. What facts are missing? What perspective isn't here? Second, is my assent actually useful? Does agreeing with this angry narrative improve my character or my understanding of the world? Or does it just stoke a useless fire? Third, what's my real goal in engaging with this? Is it to learn something? Or is it to confirm a bias and get that fleeting hit of moral certainty? By asking these, you withdraw your automatic endorsement. You might still read the article, but you read it as an investigator, not a recruit. The emotional charge just dissipates. The content becomes information to consider, not a trigger to obey. You've kept your sovereignty in a space that's designed to strip it away. This applies just the same to the curated highlight reels, the ones that spark envy. You see a perfect vacation, a professional triumph, a seemingly flawless life. The impression suggests a story of lack in your own. The discipline is to see that impression for what it is, a crafted artifact. To withhold your assent from the story that your life is lesser by comparison. To remember you're seeing a single frame, not the entire, messy, human movie. So here's a direct challenge. Open one of your social feeds. Set a timer for 2 minutes. Your only task is to scroll while consciously withholding your assent from every single impression that comes up. See the political post, but don't agree or disagree with its framing. See the enviable achievement, but don't agree with the story that you're behind. See the alarming news snippet, but don't agree with its urgency. Just observe. Watch the parade of suggestions pass by, like billboards on a highway you're driving past. Notice the constant, quiet tug on your attention, on your judgment, on your emotional energy. Those 2 minutes of pure observation will teach you more about the mechanics of your own mind than hours of passive consumption ever could. It reveals the sheer volume of contracts you're offered, and how many of them you sign without ever reading the terms. The impressions you say yes to, they don't just shape your day. They write the whole story of your life. Every quiet agreement, every time you hold back, it's more than a moment. It's a brushstroke, and over months, over years, those strokes blend. They become a portrait, the story you believe about who you are, what your life means. One person, day after day, they agree with impressions of grievance, of injustice. They're writing a story of victimhood. Their character bends toward bitterness. Another person, facing similar things, they hold back from that story. They choose instead to agree with agency, with learning. They're writing a story of resilience. The outside events can look the same: setbacks, conflicts, losses, but the inner story, built from thousands of those small yeses, that's what defines the life being lived. This is the Stoic idea of living in agreement with nature. That phrase, harmony with the rational order, it can sound abstract, but it's just this. It's the big result of tiny choices, the total of all those moments where you chose to agree with what's true and useful. Not what's dramatic, not what serves only you. To live in agreement with nature is to line up your judgments with reality, not with your fears, not with your fantasies. It's to see the world as it is, to see yourself as a capable part of it, and to sign your name to that view. A tranquil life isn't a life without storms. It's a life where you've stopped agreeing that every dark cloud is a personal catastrophe. A virtuous life isn't perfection. It's a life where you've trained yourself to agree, more often than not, to the impression that calls for courage when you feel fear, for fairness when you feel slighted, for patience when you feel rushed. Take a career setback, a significant one. 2 different stories can come from the same event. The first is built by agreeing to a chain of impressions. The starting story: I was wronged, this is unfair, my work was for nothing. Each agreement adds a layer. The narrative hardens into a tale of betrayal, permanent damage. That story, once believed, shapes what comes next: cynicism, disengagement, a defensive stance toward new chances. The life story becomes a tragedy. The protagonist is forever the one who was robbed. The second narrative starts with the same raw event, but a different pattern of agreement. The first impression of unfairness comes up, but it's met with a pause. The agreement is withheld from the catastrophic label. Instead, reason is brought in. A different judgment is chosen for agreement. This is a difficult professional challenge. I was tested. I can look at what happened and grow. This setback doesn't define my whole worth or my whole future. By agreeing to that series of reasoned impressions, a different story gets written, one of a protagonist who faces trials, who learns, adapts, continues. The character bends toward wisdom, toward strength. Same event, 2 completely different life stories, authored by the same person's power to agree or not. So pause, consider this from the long view. What's one big story about your life that you tend to agree with, Is it a story of constant struggle against a hostile world? A story of never quite measuring up, of being perpetually overlooked, or is it a story of gradual growth, of meaningful lessons learned through difficulty? Of quiet resilience? Don't judge it yet. Don't call it true or false. Just identify it. See it as the accumulated narrative you've been building, one agreed thought at a time. Now ask the main question: is this story serving your virtue, your peace? Does believing this narrative make you more courageous, just more temperate, more wise, or does it keep you small, resentful, afraid? You hold the pen. You can, starting with your very next impression, begin revising the manuscript. You don't have to tear up the old pages. You just have to write the next sentence differently, and the one after that, until the arc of your character bends slowly, surely, toward the light. The discipline of assent is an inner practice, but it's not necessarily a lonely one. Other people can act as mirrors for our impressions. You can stare at your own thoughts all day and still miss the distortion. A trusted friend or a community with a shared purpose, they hold up a different kind of lens. They reflect back what you can't see from the inside. Your story about a situation might sound perfectly logical to you, but when you speak it aloud to someone wise, they might ask a question. A gentle question that reveals a crack in the foundation. They can spot the absolute language, the catastrophic leap, the personalization you accepted without a second thought. That's the social dimension of wisdom. It's a safeguard against the echo chamber of our own biases. Stoicism, for all its focus on individual sovereignty, was never meant to be practiced in isolation. Think of Epictetus. His teachings weren't delivered from a mountaintop. They happened in his school. It was a community. Students gathered. They presented their daily struggles, their reactive judgments. And through discourse, through pointed questioning, Epictetus challenged their unexamined assents. He was the ultimate mirror. He helped them see the gap. The gap between the event and the story they were telling about it. The community provided accountability, and it provided a richer pool of perspectives. It normalized the difficulty of the work. Everyone was struggling with their impressions. Hearing others articulate their own battles made the path clearer. It made the practice less daunting. You can build a version of this for yourself. It doesn't require a formal school. It starts with one person, a partner, a friend, a family member who's also interested in growing more mindful. The practice is simple. When you're wrestling with a troubling impression, instead of just ruminating alone, you bring it to them. You describe the situation. But more importantly, you share the specific story you're telling yourself about it, the sentence you're tempted to agree with. Then you invite them to play the role of your inner advisor. Let them ask you those Stoic inquiry questions. Is this within your control? Is that an objective fact or your interpretation? Is believing this useful? What would a wise person see here? The power isn't in them giving you an answer. It's in them guiding you to ask yourself better questions. Speaking your impression out loud often drains its emotional charge. And hearing a thoughtful question from another person can unlock a perspective that was invisible to you moments before. This shared practice builds a unique kind of trust. It moves conversation beyond gossip or simple problem solving into the realm of character development. You're not just venting to feel better, you're collaborating to see more clearly, to assent more wisely, and in turn, when they share their struggles, you get to practice the same discernment for them. You strengthen your own understanding by learning to spot distorted thinking in another. It becomes a mutual training ground for resilience. So here's a small step, a concrete step to weave this into your life. Take one insight from this exploration. Maybe the idea of labeling thoughts, or the practice of withholding assent from absolute language, and share it with someone this week. Don't lecture. Just mention it as something you found useful. Then ask them a question. How do you handle it when a first impression about someone starts to upset you? Or what's a common story your mind tells you that you've learned to question? Their answer might surprise you, and that simple exchange begins to build the mirror. It reminds you that this work, while deeply personal, connects us. We are all learning to read the fine print on the contracts our minds draft every single day. Having a fellow reader beside you makes the whole process less intimidating and far more human. The Stoics found something about how the mind works a long time ago. And now modern psychology has a name for it: cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. The central idea is almost the same. It's not the event that causes your reaction. It's what you believe about the event, which is exactly what Epictetus said. People are troubled not by what happens, but by their opinion of what happens. That's not an accident. It means they were mapping the mind early on. They were identifying the mechanisms, the ones psychology now says are key to how we feel. You can see the parallels. What Stoics called an impression, psychology calls an automatic thought. That first story that just appears, they don't like me. This is going to be terrible. It's the same raw data, and the Stoic move of pausing, of not immediately agreeing with that impression, that's called cognitive distancing. You see the thought as a thought, not as a fact. You create space, and then the Stoic practice of questioning it, asking, is this true? Is this helpful? That's cognitive restructuring. That's the work of examining a distorted thought and finding a more balanced one. The steps are the same. Notice the automatic thought. Don't fuse with it, challenge it, find a more useful perspective. This gives Stoic practice a real weight. It's not just philosophy, it's a psychological protocol. Tested, used for anxiety, for depression. There's a classic CBT tool, the thought record. You write down the situation, the automatic thought, the emotion. And then you write an alternative, balanced thought. Look at that process. It's a structured, written version of the Stoic discipline of assent. You're making the impression weight. You're cross-examining it on paper. You're choosing a new judgment to agree with. The worksheet formalizes the inner dialogue, the one the Stoics said to have in the moment. So if you know CBT, consider this, seeing it through a Stoic lens. Does that change it? If it's not just a modern technique for symptom relief, but an ancient discipline of character, does that add a different purpose? It shifts the goal from just reducing distress to cultivating wisdom. It's the same map, but the destination gets larger. From feeling better to becoming wiser, from managing the mind to mastering it. Every act where you say yes with discipline, that's a vote for your own freedom. You're taking your mind back from the tyranny of reactions you didn't choose. That's where all this practice is headed. The Stoics had a word, eleutharia. Inner freedom. It's not the freedom to do whatever you want out in the world. That's an illusion, bound by 1,000 external limits. This is the freedom no one can ever take. The freedom to choose your own judgment, no matter what the world throws at you. It's liberation from being a puppet. Your strings aren't pulled by every passing event, every alarming headline, every shifting mood of someone else. Your inner citadel is sovereign. You experience the world, but you aren't enslaved by your first impression of it. That's the profound tranquility, the ataraxia, the Stoics sought. Not a blank, emotionless state, but a deep and unshakable serenity. It comes from knowing your peace is built on ground you alone control. Epictetus put it clearly. No man is free who is not master of himself. That mastery isn't of the body or of other people. It's mastery of the ruling faculty, your capacity to give or withhold your agreement. To be master of yourself is to be the final authority on what thoughts you'll endorse. It's to look at the chaotic parade of impressions and say, I will decide which of you gets my signature. That's the core of all Stoic freedom. Without it, you're a ship with no rudder, tossed by every wave of circumstance and every wind of feeling. With it, you may still sail through storms, but you hold the wheel. Think back to where we began, that short text message that seemed to rewrite your whole day. The untrained mind reads it, assents instantly to a story of conflict, and is swept into a current of anxiety. Its freedom is gone. It has handed its inner state over to a few pixels on a screen. The practitioner, the one exercising this discipline, reads the same words. They feel the initial impression, the same suggestion of trouble, but they pause. They withhold their immediate agreement. They separate the fact from the frightening fiction. The fact is, these words were sent. The fiction is the catastrophic meaning I'm about to assign them. By withholding assent, they remain in their citadel. They experience the event, but they are free from its emotional hijacking. Their peace is intact because it was never up for negotiation. The same event. Two entirely different experiences of freedom, or the traffic jam. The automatic reaction is to agree it is a personal injustice, a disaster ruining your plans. You become a prisoner in your own car, raging against an immovable line of vehicles. The practitioner feels the frustration, but refuses to sign the contract that says this shouldn't be happening. They see the stopped cars, they acknowledge the delay, but their judgment is their own. They might choose to listen to an audiobook or simply practice patience. The external circumstance is identical, but one person is in chains and the other is free. The chains aren't made of metal, they're forged from unchecked agreements. So pause here and ask yourself this, not in the abstract but with real specificity. What would inner freedom look and feel like for you in one particular area of your life? Is it in your morning routine, where you currently feel rushed and harried before the day even begins? Freedom might feel like a quiet 10 minutes where your mind isn't already racing through the to-do list because you've withheld assent from the story that the day is an emergency. Is it in a difficult relationship where every comment feels like a trigger? Freedom might feel like listening to their words without immediately agreeing with the old narrative of criticism, creating space for a new understanding to possibly emerge. Is it with your own ambition, where the fear of failure feels like a constant weight? Freedom might feel like pursuing a goal passionately, while consciously refusing to agree that your worth is on the line with each outcome. Define it not as a vague ideal, but as a lived sensation in a real context. That definition becomes your compass. Every time you feel the pull to assent to an impression that would steal that freedom, you'll remember what you're voting for. You aren't just managing a thought, you're casting a ballot for the sovereign, tranquil life you are building, one conscious agreement at a time. Philosophy is worthless without practice. So here's a simple training plan for your discipline of assent. Think of it as a daily regimen, a way to build the muscle of judgment through small repetitions. This is how you move from the map to walking the path. The Stoics were athletes of the soul. Every athlete needs a routine. This is yours. Start your day with intention. Before the rush, take 1 minute. As you wake or with your first water, set a clear intention. It's not a goal for what you'll accomplish out there. It's a commitment for how you'll govern yourself in here. Your intention could be straightforward. Today, I will pause before I agree with a troubling thought. Or today, I will remember I am the sky, not the weather. That minute plants a flag. It stations your inner advisor at the gate before the first impression arrives. Then move through your day with the labeling drill. Your target is 3 times, just 3. You don't need to catch every thought. You're practicing precision, not perfection. When you feel that tug, a flash of road rage, a ping of insecurity, a wave of overwhelm, you engage. Internally, you label the thought as it happens. Not I am angry, but I am having a thought that this driver is rude. Not I am overwhelmed, but a thought about my capacity is appearing. This isn't about changing the feeling. It's about changing your relationship to it. Each label is a single, clean repetition. You're strengthening the pathway that creates distance. By aiming for just 3, you make it achievable. You turn a lofty discipline into a daily game you can win. In the evening, you conduct your review. This is where the learning solidifies. Set aside 5 minutes, reflect on your day, and identify one key moment. One impression with a strong emotional charge. It could be a work email that triggered irritation, a conversation that left you feeling defensive, or a moment of desire for something you scrolled past. Take that single impression and put it through the Stoic courtroom. Ask the 4 questions from your inner advisor. 1. Was this within my control? 2. Was my reaction based on fact or my interpretation? 3. Was believing that story useful for my character? 4. What would a wise person have assented to here? You're not judging your performance. You're conducting a forensic analysis of a single mental event. This is how wisdom gets woven into your memory. The Stoics measured progress in tiny increments. Seneca wrote that we should be satisfied if we reduce our errors, even if we can't eliminate them. He said to rejoice if just one day comes where you can say, I was not angry, I did not envy. That's the spirit of this regimen, consistency over perfection. Showing up for the practice is the victory. The transformation happens in the aggregate, in the quiet accumulation of 1,000 small, conscious pauses. Let's walk through a sample evening review. The event, a terse work email from a colleague. Your initial story was, they're being short with me because they're unhappy with my work. The emotion was a mix of anxiety and resentment. Now, the review, question 1, control. Their tone and their private feelings are not within my control. My interpretation and my response are, question 2, fact or interpretation. The fact is the email was brief. The interpretation is that it signals disapproval. That's my story. Question 3, usefulness. Believing the story of disapproval made me defensive and distracted. It was not useful. Question 4, the wise person. A wise person might have seen a brief email as just that, a busy person being efficient. They would have withheld assent from the negative narrative until more evidence was present. This review doesn't erase the event, but it disarms it. It turns a source of irritation into a lesson in discernment. So here is your prompt, your first step. For the next 48 hours, do not try to do it all. Commit to just one element. Perhaps it's the morning intention, or the 3 labels during the day, or the 5-minute evening review of one moment. Choose one, and for those 2 days, observe the subtle effects. Does that small commitment create a little more space in your reactions? Does it make the world feel slightly less demanding of your immediate emotional agreement? That observation is your evidence, proof that the fortress walls are growing stronger, one deliberate brick at a time. This whole thing comes back to one quiet mechanism. An impression shows up, you get a moment to agree with it or not, and that agreement is what changes a suggestion into a full emotion. We've been through that process, seeing the first thought as just information, creating that pause, questioning the story with reason. The tools are simple, but they change everything. The pause is freedom, the inquiry is clarity, the choice is sovereignty. The point is this: emotional power isn't built into your thoughts, it's granted by you in that split second of assent. So peace isn't about rearranging the world. That's a battle you lose. It's about governing this one internal act. Your signature on the contracts your mind writes. Marcus Aurelius had a line for this. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you find strength." That's the whole philosophy in one sentence. Strength doesn't come from bending reality. It comes from that understanding. Your power is in the jurisdiction of your own judgment. So as we finish, hold on to this. The ability to shape your emotional life, to build resilience from the inside. It wasn't waiting in some future achievement or in other people's approval. It's been within you the whole time, operating in the background of every day, and it starts fresh with your very next impression. Next time your mind hands you a story wrapped in urgency or fear, you'll know you have the pause, you have the questions, you hold the pen. Your assent is yours to give or to withhold. And in that simple act of choice, you author your day, you author the character of your life.